Glory be to the Lord. Welcome to our Kingsburg City Council workshop. The council chambers is open to the public at 100% capacity. Public does have the option to call in with at 1-425-436-6335, passcode 5290024 to provide public comment. All written comments were due yesterday by 4 o'clock, and they will not be read out loud. At this time, I'd like to call to order the Wednesday, July 28, 2021 meeting. Madam Clerk, can you please take roll call?
Councilmember Hurtado?
Here.
Councilmember Palomar?
Here.
Councilmember Purcell Jr.?
Here.
Councilmember Roman?
Here.
Mayor North?
Here. Thank you. Item number 2 is public comment. Any person may directly address the council at this time on any item that is not on the agenda or any item that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the council. A maximum of 5 minutes is allowed per speaker. First, we'll start in chambers. Do we have any public that would like to make a comment on anything that's not on our agenda? No? So we will open it up to the phone lines. If there is anyone on the line for public comment, not involving the American Rescue Plan conversation that we're going to have, it will be your turn to speak now. Hearing none, we will close public comment, and we will move on to item number 3, the American Rescue Plan Coronavirus State and Local Fiscal Recovery Funds Use Discussion, presentation by City Manager Alexander Henderson.
All right, thank you. Just throw up the PowerPoint quick. All right, so just real briefly for tonight's workshop, go over a little bit about the Rescue Plan Act. We talked a little bit about that at previous meetings. Talk about eligible uses, what's not eligible, some of the reporting requirements. There is a frequently asked question document. I think it's 42 pages, so there are a lot of questions and answers that are in there. That's part of your packet this evening. And then I think the main goal of tonight is to introduce this, present it, and then get some ideas for funding that hopefully we can get some general council direction on maybe some areas to look at for staff to do some additional research, and then obviously to allow the community to provide their input as well, and then we can talk about future workshops and come back with more information, because I do expect that there's going to be additional information that comes from the Treasury Department, from the federal government, as they finalize their rulemaking with regards to using the funds. So again, just a brief overview. The Rescue Plan Act provides about $350 billion for local state governments throughout the country. We're considered a non-entitlement, which means less than 50,000 in population, so there's about $20 billion available for all those communities. California alone, the state will receive $26 billion, counties about 7.7, and then larger cities $7 billion, and those smaller non-entitlement units $1.2 billion. So Kingsburg's share is just a little shy of $2.9 million. We've received our first 50% amount a couple of weeks ago, and the second 50% will be received 1 year from now. So we're assuming next July as well. So this is how it's working really for sure everywhere in California. I know other states, because the money flows to the states and then down to the smaller communities from there. That's how it's working for us. So the interim rule, this is basically guidance that all states and local governments have to use with regards to how the funds can be spent. We are different from the CARES Act funds. So if you recall, when we got CARES Act dollars, those originally came to the state. The state then sent it to the city. The city was considered a sub-recipient, which means that we had kind of different reporting requirements that we had to send into the state. That's not the case this time. We are the direct recipient, which means we have our reporting requirements will be different this time, and it will be our responsibility to maintain some of the documentation things. So this stuff is important, obviously, when determining how we spend the funds, but also when considering what we any programming or future reporting or things like that we will have to maintain, so we don't have to pay back any of the money later. These are the 5 broad eligible uses that are outlined in the interim rules. So those are to respond to the COVID-19 public health emergency and support activities to decrease the spread of the virus. Obviously, that's large. That's a broad thing, but we can unpack that a little bit as we go. Address the negative economic impacts caused by the public health emergency. Replace lost public sector revenue due to the pandemic. Provide premium pay to eligible workers or grants to eligible employees of essential workers. And then invest in water, sewer, and broadband infrastructure. And so that one's important too, because you can't invest in different types of infrastructure. It's very specific to water, sewer, and broadband. So I didn't put a slide in here for what it can't be used for, but I thought it's probably important to talk about those too. So it cannot be used for pension contributions. It cannot be used to reduce taxes. It can't be used for existing debt service that the city may have. It cannot be used for legal settlements. It cannot be used to replenish rainy day funds. And I mentioned it can't be used for infrastructure that's not included there. So a couple of things about the reporting requirements. Our first report is due to Treasury by October 31st, depending on if what funds we've spent to that point. They haven't come out with the reporting forms. You might remember when we went through the CARES Act, it was very sort of late in the process, and they actually delayed it a few times to where our reports were due back to them because they hadn't actually created the reporting documents yet. So we're waiting for some of that information. The big thing is that we have to retain things for at least 5 years after the funds have been expended. And then again, all the reporting guidance hasn't been released. So I guess, I didn't touch on this. So we have to keep it for 5 years after they've been expended. So the dates to keep in mind is that we have to obligate all the funds by December 31st, 2024, which means you at least have to have a plan for them by then. And then if you have sort of long-term plans, larger infrastructure projects, the money itself has to actually be spent by December 31st, 2026. So we have 5 years to spend the funds. And then we have to maintain all the documentations for 5 years beyond whatever our last date is from those expenditures. So before we, I guess, kind of get into just general ideas, any additional questions, and just sort of brainstorming, a couple of things that I think, this is our recommendation. Some of the things that, as we participate in webinars, are just basically some guidelines to consider. So the funds are one-time in nature; they'll not be ongoing, and so general guidance, GFOA guidance, things like that, has been to use them for one-time projects. So not necessarily creating a long-term program because this revenue won't be continuing for the long term. Some of the things to think about when we talk about which type of projects to not overlap with other state and federal programs that may already exist. So, for example, there's some infrastructure legislation that's moving its way through the federal government, so we probably want to wait to see what that includes before we earmark any of these dollars, so we don't, we can be as flexible as we possibly can be. Obviously, there are other entities too. There's possibilities. We've had some conversations, or the county's kind of engaging in conversations too, because the county received a fair amount of money as well as to, either potential partnerships or, just making sure that anything that we propose is not, maybe already being handled by the county or the state or somebody else as well. And then, the projects themselves, just sort of how we evaluate all of, our capital projects, and, when we're putting together a budget and things like that, is to consider the city's adopted strategic goals and to align, the projects with one of those 6 categories. So some general potential projects that we've seen, obviously, specifically spelled out in the FAQs and in the interim rule are capital improvements, one-time projects, but again, they have to be either water, sewer, or stormwater. We don't have we don't run our own municipal utility with regards to broadband, so I guess there's a possibility, I guess, we could partner with local nonprofits on something like that, but since we don't have existing infrastructure, I assume that's probably not something that we would undertake with these funds. Lost revenue replacement, so just the revenues that we didn't get through, so sales tax and transient occupancy taxes, things like that we would supplement. And one of the things is that obviously we're going to be monitoring what the budget looks like over the next several years. So as these funds don't have to be spent for 5 years, that's something to consider, as well as replacing that revenue in future budgets as well. Obviously, support for small businesses, which can be done in a lot of ways. The CARES Act, you guys provided direct relief grants to small businesses. There are other things like the facade program, which we already have, is an eligible type of use. The monies for like the expansion of outdoor dining, things like that, are eligible uses as well. Nonprofit assistance. So again, there has to be, a nexus to, either losses or activity that they had, experienced from COVID. But there are the potential to partner to use these funds and provide grants or other assistance to nonprofits. Premium pay and other future COVID responses. So obviously, as we, we've been hearing about the Delta variant and the potential impact that will have on our operations, from a personnel standpoint, and whether we need to invest in additional PPE and things like that going forward. Our senior meal program, so we are continuing to provide senior meals, so it's another type of eligible project. And then we've talked a little bit about forgiving outstanding debt for overdue or non-paid bills and the penalties related to water, things like that. And so that's referenced as bad debt recovery because it's sort of a form. That's how it's identified in the interim rule. So it's similar to lost revenue replacement, but it's for more specific. It's utilities for enterprise funds. So those are just a few brief ideas of ways that dollars can be spent. So now I guess we can just sort of get into it. So one of the things I've had was to just write down 3 different ideas, trying to rank them on your sheets. If you don't have a specific project, an area or a topic, keep that in mind. And I guess it's really an opportunity to brainstorm, and then we can, kind of talk about it, write them all down together, see if there are trends or themes, obviously some of them, and then we can talk about them as a group and go from there. But I guess before we take a few minutes for that, are there questions? Yes.
Do we have any water or sewage, needs? Or are there, do we have any shortfalls that?
Yeah, I think Daniel and Dave Peters have identified some areas that, we know of, through some of our existing plans that we could potentially use these funds for, or accelerate some of those as well. So there are some general infrastructure projects that would qualify, and then that ultimately just becomes, like anything, a part of the priorities of how the council ultimately decides to spend the funds. But yeah.
As far as with SKF, as far as older pipelines, do we have sewer pipeline that needs to be done, needs to be replaced, or looking at our R&R? I know that's something that we've looked at previously with SKF.
Yeah, there are some areas, so there are certain things with SKF, obviously, that we have a fund with them that they'll take care of as part of R&R. There are usually with our sewer, it's our responsibility if there's a capacity issue, for example. So we know there's probably an area in certain parts of the town that aren't there yet, but are getting close to probably having to be upsized, right? So a larger pipe, and so this would be something that would qualify for those funds as well. So I think, before we, kind of our thought was, let's identify or, see what the council direction, community direction is on where those priorities lie. Like, hey, we'd like to identify that specific project or those specific projects and a price for them. And then, if that's what you guys want to see, then staff will go back and do that research. So before we compile a $3 million list of projects.
That could take you.
Yeah.
I mean, just one project,
Yeah,
alone could take up $2 million.
Absolutely.
Project, so that's why I was
Yeah.
wondering.
And so that's kind of what, and if that's the, that's the direction, then we'll come back and we'll take a look at that and give those quotes. And there might be an opportunity where you're, if it's a water project or, the sewer project where we're using some ARPA funds and some existing, city accounts to take care of it, right? So we're not, utilizing all of it in one place.
Alex, just something to contribute for the water and sewer funds. Both water and sewer funds have to meet the eligibility criteria for the state revolving fund. So they have specific categories. Like I said, we can, if you guys decide, hey, we want to do water, we want to do sewer projects, we can provide you guys the handbook and maybe the category of the area that you're thinking in to see if that specific project meets the eligibility for it. So.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Anything else? Okay, let's take, 5-10 minutes or so and just fill those things out, and then we'll reconvene. Go through them all.
Can we go back to the eligible expenses page?
Yeah.
Remodel. But your remodel?
Yeah.
Hey, Alex, I have a question. Would parks be eligible?
Yeah, so it's not like a perfect, there's some guidance, let me see if I can find it and show it for you.
Specifically,
Yeah.
irrigate, plant grass and trees at the dog park.
Mhm.
I mean, come on, we need to, right?
Yeah, like,
Something like that.
I don't know, what do we have to get into is, like, I know that there are maintenance things that they say, oh, we know people have been using parks, more, so is there a maintenance component to that then you could use some money for, and so I think we just have to make sure that there's that nexus to COVID, and I'm just trying to figure that out. I'm just waiting through the guide. Huh? Yeah, social distancing, that's right. That's right. Yeah.
Actually, we're both getting out of business in all the jurisdictions that which, yeah, Joe. Yeah.
We did transmission lines, fire, we could say that it's fire.
So that you could do the name.
That's true, but I wouldn't be able to say it's because of the lack of fire.
The only way you're really gonna know is capacity.
Water pressure. We would do the water model, just say, based on. Continually provide water capacity and. We're even saying about protection, but that could just be a byproduct of.
It comes up.
Yeah. It's the handbook, it's like the handbook.
Can I explain it to you? So I don't have to answer.
project where we put so much money into the dollars, and it's like, it's pushing people off.
Construction of regional reservoirs that ensure the business providing information primarily fire protection, project improvements for future population, so you can, if it's not existing, you can use it.
So if it were existing infrastructure and then smaller, that's what we're finding right now, there's like 3 spots.
Yeah, and so you can have it tied to different areas for water, like consolidation. There's 6 categories for water. The only one that we don't I don't know, unless there was something that people was providing.
Oh, yeah, and like, so for like example, like, I would say something duplicate because they don't really have the ability to do it, it's like the county is doing a rental over it, yeah.
Right, right,
You know what I mean?
yeah.
And so like,
But like our own utilities were.
sure, yeah, that's,
Yeah, so it has
I thought we were, there's something that said something about outstanding debt, and I was,
so it would be for like the.
but you're good, you wrote it on there, I did. I didn't ask the question.
you read this question about parks, and then you read the answer, and you tell me what you think about it.
It's by the federal government, we're just not gonna be able to figure it out. I'll do my level best.
There's 4 paragraphs there. Well, it says some things about parks, and then it talks about certain community, it's just very, I don't know, it's opaque, I guess is the best way to put it. I don't have, so like when
A filibuster?
someone asks a question, I'm like, yeah, I
Talk
think
for
so.
hours about nothing to just prolong things.
Well, you would just, you can rearrange stuff, you're not gonna get much out of it.
Of course.
You have to, you don't get prices. Another 6 or 8 days.
Not even a business hour anymore at this point. You said you always have no.
I got 2 different answers.
But Tim was just on water, right?
One's the water, the other one's for the consumer.
But it's not retaining to the grant.
So have you been in Arizona on this
At least that we
summer? Is Lindsay back? Or is she home for
I'm
summer?
not sure, like, I know it has an aspect of water recapture. Yeah, but I don't know, I haven't dug in that far to see if we could pay.
Yeah.
Yeah, we are, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that acquisition. Yeah, we have to check.
Right. It's part of the administration of the water supply. But I think you could make it. I don't know. In summer.
Yeah. And they did.
Between that and you did.
I haven't been to Park Lodge.
Especially.
And I love the style that she was doing. She did class, yeah.
Especially if you wanted to keep it all downtown. And then you truly could do something.
Yeah, you bet.
You could combine all 3 of these rooms. Like a chamber, council chamber.
Yeah. Vince, we'd have to ask, so they do have a section for groundwater protection and restoration. So we would just need to get a little bit more specific on whether that specific project meets the criteria. Yeah.
Where'd you get out of that? Yes.
That's what you got out of it.
Those projects that restore aquifers, there's pump and treat projects, aquifer recharge projects, projects that increase aquifer withdrawal, rainwater harvesting, water conservation, water use. So we would just need to, that was something that you wanted to look at, and try to propose that, and we can use a little bit more research.
These are grass.
So that you could,
Oh. Talking about South King and.
Okay,
There are like
Are you ready?
studies that show it's unhealthy to be that close to a freeway too. You don't wanna study like the tree in a row.
are we ready? All right, well, let's, I think what we can do is maybe, just have, maybe have people go around and say what they have, and if someone says something that, and I'm just gonna write it up here, but if someone has the same idea, maybe just raise your hand, and then I'll put a tally mark next to it, so we can kind of get an idea. Who wants to start?
I'll start.
Oh, yeah, all right.
I was like,
Water.
Christina.
All right, what do you got?
I've got, whiskey. If we could, use some of these funds for South Kings, our GSA,
For like recharge projects?
yes,
or-
recharge projects, exactly. Water basins, buying land or building the water basins or whatever's needed.
Anyone else have that? Oh, got tally in the back, all right. Okay, what else, Vince? Oh, okay.
Another one I had was, nonprofits, and then my main thing was, I don't know how the pandemic last year affected our youth sports programs.
Mhm.
I know a lot of them didn't compete, and I don't know how that last year, affected their budgets or, their accounts.
Okay, so other hand raising for youth sports or other nonprofits maybe, that I can maybe keep a tally of
Nonprofit, yeah.
other nonprofits.
Senior center?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Senior center.
yeah, senior center. I put funding for after-school rec.
I think maybe,
Or education-based.
yeah, I'd say senior center and after-school rec are, they're community programs, but also sort of, those are city programs.
Yeah.
If we have something along the similar lines in R3, do you want us to chime in now with that, or wait until he's done with his 3?
I think you can chime in now, yeah.
Okay, so as far as nonprofits, in, my top 3, I had, and you know this because I've talked to you about it, many of our nonprofits in town did not get allocations like we got or other businesses. And 2 that really stand out in our community that help community-wide are KCAP. So I did talk with Ida, about how COVID impacted them, and I have copies here of the letters, where she broke down the numbers. These are for Chief because he has the third one, but I have 3 things to talk about, so yeah. So I have a letter here where she broke down what their loss was during COVID. And we all know KCAP, like, they stood in the gap for us as far as senior center and the community. So their income is based on donations, but heavily from the thrift store, and they had to close it down completely. And then when it was time to reopen, they had little to no business, and her thoughts were because people were still really afraid of COVID, maybe like because of second half closing. And so when you look at their total loss during that period of time, it was $154,624, but they did get a PPP loan for $48,000. So in talking to her about what their need would be, if you minus that PPP loan, it's $106,624, because they're still continuing with recovery and support of our citizens. That was one.
Okay.
I have the break, I think I forwarded that to you, didn't I? The second thing is our chamber, which is promotes all businesses downtown. They pretty much had to stop a lot of what they were doing, and they do get funding from us annually, but they do rely on ticket sales at the fireworks show and events that raise money. They were not able to do that, although they did get very creative when we started to open that. And they had to use their dues in order to pay rent and make payroll. So when you look at what, they ended up having to lay off their employees and really rely on volunteers. And above all of that, their landlord increased their rent an additional $258 a month. And so when you look at their losses, they're greater than what their ask would be of us. And we're not ever in a position to give one-time money like this. And so it would be $100,000 to help make up part of the difference of the loss. Those were the two that I had. My third is not along this line.
Vince, you have more?
Oh, yeah, my third was, business funding, I mean, like, for future losses, if, you know, with this Delta variant, and today the governor came out with a mask mandate, right? Or recommendation of wearing a mask, so.
So for small businesses, you're
You know, yeah,
You think for grants?
small business,
The grants for small businesses?
yes.
Similar to
Funding,
like,
for the grant, yes. Yeah, system what we did in,
I put down
That was-
small,
yeah,
I
that's
put
what I
grants
meant
for small businesses.
yeah.
3?
Five?
Oh. I hope you don't have to close down again.
Can I add my dollars to that maybe?
Sure.
So I had, I know we had, in previous council meetings, we had discussed potentially doing something to continue to promote small businesses and get people downtown. And I thought it would be cool to put some funds just straight up towards dollars and doing some sort of engaging community program in a way to get people to not only hear from the city and interact with the city, which meets that community communication, but also support our small businesses to get people downtown. So I am really open to discussing it later on how we can implement something like that, but putting money straight up into dollars, like a sum, and then deciding how we can get creative with getting people downtown. I also had small business grants on mine too, though.
Along with the small business grants, I don't think we really included nonprofits, other nonprofits beyond the two that, or the few that we had mentioned. I don't know if that would tag on to that.
Yeah.
We also have the depot and also the historical park as well.
Yeah.
Because they weren't open the entire time as well. Kind of going along with that, I had, because we've been talking about a downtown strategic plan, putting money toward a downtown strategic plan. Because I know we're trying to get that off the ground, but.
Could something like that go towards the bid? The BID instead of creating, do you mean like creating
Because
something or
we're
like-
working, that's something they're
Right.
trying to put the strategic plan together, but yeah.
That's
Also, kind of have to do the bid as well.
good. You just posted the downtown strategic plan. Awesome. Thank you for sharing.
Okay.
Want me to mention my third thing? Okay. So, the third item that I have, involves the police department, and it's two parts. During COVID, we saw a rise, we utilized our resource officer greatly in a difficult way. We had a lot of calls for, child protective services and kids taken into protective custody. So there is, I call it the family room. I learned it's really called the soft interview room when you walk into the police department. And they've done a really good job at making it friendly for, adults, seniors that are in there, but it's really a place where a lot of children are waiting, whether it's for a social worker or to be interviewed. And it has not been updated or remodeled since 2003. Spending a lot of time in that room this last year, I did notice a lot of different needs in that room. So I met with Chief, and I met with volunteer Barbara Taylor, who really likes to do interior design, and she's a volunteer for the police department. And we went and we looked through that room and looked at what the needs would be as far as seating. And our officers are so good. They go get McDonald's for the kids, and they do everything to make them feel comfortable, and there's not a place for them to sit and eat. So really looking at the layout in that room. And so we came up with a list of needs for that room. Not so much physically remodeling other than the door. And we would want to put in a Dutch door for some privacy and supervision. Some paint, but the estimate on the high end would be $10,000 to put into that room, which would also include things like backpacks with toiletries. They always give backpacks to kids as they leave. Putting a TV mounted in that room to drown out some of the conversations that's happening because the kids can hear their parents, you know, whether they're in the waiting room or in a cell, you know, and with maybe like a Disney Plus subscription, and just modernizing that, but also a side of it which is more modern for adults too. So that was one part of that. And I think that room got a lot of utilization as a result of COVID, how it impacted our families. The second thing is, while I was there and that was the focus, I also walked around the police department and I asked Chief about the plans for remodeling. And in walking around that building, it was originally a supermarket, then a gym. And when you really walk around and look at the details in it, we can do better. And I know there's remodel plans for it. I do have listed a bunch of the points that he noticed and a few things that I noticed. There's a lot of water damage, whether it's up above where the ceilings, the AC units are, or is it called the hard interrogation room or interview room, Chief? The water damage is in the wall.
Yes.
And our officers are storing things in saunas, like they used to be saunas for the gym. And so in talking with Chief, I think really he had the idea of using Measure E, $100,000 for Measure E. I'm not a contractor, I'm a daughter of a contractor, and in walking around and looking at everything that needs to be done, and you include prevailing wage, that seemed very low. And I think with some one-time money, we could do better, and we can save that Measure E money for more staff, because that's ongoing money. And my idea was, let's get Dave in there with maybe somebody who can do the site plan and do like an initial estimate to see how much doing the remodel for what they need in the organization, the shelving, all of that, get an estimate, and I approximated $350,000 for that, but really that's ballpark.
Okay. Which was better than my ballpark.
You need to show them my look when you said $100,000.
I've described it already.
Yeah.
Next.
Can I jump in here then?
Yeah, please.
So, we had also discussed, at previous council meetings about forgiving the overdue bills and utilities for our residents. Obviously, we wouldn't try to do, a rent relief program or something like that because we don't want to duplicate things that are already happening at a state and, county level. We think forgiving those debts would, help a lot of families. And then, the second one, or sorry, I was gonna ask if people.
Well, I have that one too.
Oh, just one?
Anyway, it's not like on this list, but it's on
Okay,
this
cool.
list. Can we count that?
And then the second thing I had was, investment in our city hall, tech. So, what I mean by that is, you know, we did this kind of really fast, and I think it would be beneficial if we had some maybe easier, I don't know, maybe better mics or a better camera, or I'm thinking storage, infrastructure, like how we move forward with, once we're not really forced to do on the phone. I don't know if that's gonna continue, I just wanna make sure that we can be comfortable with that technology piece, and once again, that is improving our communication with the public and all of that good stuff. So that's the second one. I don't think that will cost very much money either. I don't have a cost for it, but we can talk with Reggie or something.
I also had, City Hall, but remodel and, to make more space, so we can rearrange, and bring more employees. We need it.
Yeah.
City Hall was on my list too.
I had the same, Alex.
Okay.
City Hall change tech and City Hall remodel.
Jeez.
Anybody else?
I think we all just want
Yeah.
new replace. I think we all agree behind that.
Yeah, City Hall tech was one of mine in there too.
I got you.
Oh, gotcha.
The outgrown the current.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And then the last one I had was the nonprofit, but that's already been brought up, so.
Has anyone brought up lost revenues due to the pandemic or lost revenues, future lost revenues?
Just talking about like city lost revenue.
Yes.
Almost finance director, you all.
She did retire.
Are we gonna be
I mean, it's not on my list, but it's something that's important, so I'm gonna say, yeah.
Honestly, I think that's the number one, right there. It's the easiest to qualify, it's
Yeah.
less likely to be an issue, and just like Vince was saying, we don't know, it's all in the back of your mind, that number's spike here, we don't know where things are going, so, you know, you really kind of need to hear it, I think, as far as, this is a 4-year give, right, basically. What's the priority, you know, like the water is a good one, which I agree with 100%, but you got time to work on that one, and you don't know how far the money will go, so. Just outside looking in, I would say those other ones, I agree with, as far as city hall remodel and things like that, but to the public, that really looks like, you know, not necessarily the priority.
Yeah, I think with any of the remodels and the PD one too, I'd have to, some of the stuff I have to wait for some more guidance because it does have to be tied to, you know, the pandemic response. This one, some of the other ones are for sure, we know that they're not questionable, so,
I think if you shore up your revenue,
Yeah.
which, you know, that's kind of tough, because it's a formula.
Yeah.
You can just drop it there, but then, you know, take it there and then figure out the remodel with other funds.
that's right.
I have future COVID response, and I put down especially for like police and fire, because if there's something in the future that you guys need, that if, you know, we're not completely out of this yet, but if there is something you do need to buy, now is the time, that you could think you could use for other things, but also for future response. For police and fire to purchase it.
My third thing was sustainable development, energy efficiency initiatives, maybe even for small businesses to be more energy efficient, even planning around planning the city. I just put sustainable development as kind of a catch-all phrase.
Yeah, maybe something over to the small business.
Yeah.
Okay.
got some water projects, so, like I previously mentioned, there's different categories within the, eligibility handbook of what type of projects, are eligible, so, Water Department does have a few, water efficiency, so, replacing flow meters at the well sites, to help us track water, adding VFDs to, well sites right now that are either on or off, so they either run full power or they run, but the VFD, we're able to kind of reduce the usage and we can kind of rotate through all our wells, which improves our efficiency so we don't have to use one well more than the other. You're looking somewhere about 150K to 250K depending on the scope of the project. Water security, replacing gates, adding lighting at some of the well sites. And like I said, not that we want to make them super inviting, but, you know, we definitely want to make them as secure as possible. Water transmission and stormwater transmission as well. This past year, in this budget cycle, we have a water model update, which could identify some deficiencies for us. Kind of thing with that is that it has to be existing infrastructure, so it can't be anything to kind of expand what we currently have. So if we want to expand, then I guess we can use our city dollars to go towards expansion, and we can use the ARPA funding to take care of existing deficient infrastructure that we currently have.
There's another vote from fire for that same thing for the water infrastructure. Just noting the demand that was on the system with everybody at home was significantly different than it was when everyone was at work and doing everything else. So it was definitely noted there was a lot of low pressure situations that could really be detrimental.
Councilmember Purcell, and he doesn't know when to hop in to say something, he doesn't want to go over people, but he's on the line.
Councilmember Purcell, are you there?
I am. Just being patient.
You want to vote? Yeah, well.
You know, my big things are reimburse the city for whatever is overdue, and then infrastructure for water and sewage is going to get my vote. My big concern with this is we don't have to spend this right now. And I think that with there being a COVID variant that is a very unknown thing and how that's going to impact us, and the fact that we have time, I think that it's just one of those things that we really have to focus on kind of saving that for our infrastructure stuff that we're going to be needing with this water situation coming up. That's a big concern that I have, is just the infrastructure for water that's going to end up coming out of the city's budget one way or another. I'd like to kind of have a little bit of a cushion until we get closer to that. So I'm just cautious with spending stuff on the stuff that's a want, because it's going to be a need, I think, within this next few years. And I think that we can hold on to that funding for a while until we really need it. But that's just my 2 cents. I'll jump back in whenever, whenever I want to argue, I guess.
Can I add to that?
Thanks. Yeah, go ahead.
I think he has a point with, you know, not wanting to spend too much and have that money for future emergencies. And so to Councilmember Roman's point of wanting to have money put in place for the police department and fire department, what if we had like an emergency response specifically for COVID-related issues and needs for the two departments? Kind of a lump sum of like each department has this money for them to be able to pull from if needed, you know, not being able to get that somewhere else, right? So if they need something to immediately respond to COVID-related issues, they'll have that lump sum. Instead of maybe spending it on things right away, I'm sure you could, both departments, but having some sort of money to the side to say, we know that there could be whatever dollar amount we decide, and it's that emergency hits, or we're in another lockdown, or we need whatever it is we'll need, there's some money put to the side for that, and that's not being spent right away.
Sure.
Question on that, aren't those items FEMA reimbursable?
We were on the phone with FEMA for 2.5 hours today. That is all up in the air. They are playing it by ear. There's 300 committed things into, over, I think you said 15 to 16,000 applications from different cities in FEMA, because you have to think this is nationwide and 6 territories outside of the nation. It's an unprecedented emergency. So in talking about replacing any money that would be there from FEMA, we don't know. We know that we will be able to get overtime, the things that we do for personnel and some of the materials, but we don't know on other things. We're still seeking guidance, and they're doing all the research for us as we speak.
You can't really do infrastructure with FEMA.
Yeah. It's just
probably the most likely to get caught by.
Well, this,
Yeah, I mean, I think, we'll get reimbursed for all of our efforts related to, like, the vaccine agenda clinic and things like that, but like a separate fund, like a PPE fund, that's not, that's the stuff that got covered, a good portion got covered by CARES grant dollars and things like that, but as we go forward, this is probably, as long as, if we don't know, this would be the fund to use.
those are very useful when it came time to it, because the cost of raw material, cost of materials skyrocketed. We had stuff that went 15-fold over what it was usually costing us for bandages, for masks.
Was it illegal though to price gouge?
You had to prove it. It was open market, and we had to prove it, and we didn't have it, and we had to order it. It wasn't, I'm gonna turn me in, nobody's at work.
The demand was so high.
Right.
Very early on. I mean, it thinned itself out after a while, but you couldn't find a paper mask or rubber gloves or Clorox wipes for a long time.
Yeah.
Or toilet paper.
and hopefully, since we've learned a little bit from that first COVID hit, this can be something that can be set to the side for emergency response. And, Lord willing, it doesn't happen again, that bad. But I think that would be a really smart, emergency investment. And then the department head, the chief can take that lead as far as like, how much.
Gotta be careful with that. All right, other ideas?
I have two.
Okay.
I think a lot of us share the same. I know we mentioned senior center, but specific senior center kitchen remodel, COVID related only because in the event something like this happens again, we're not equipped to continue providing meals for seniors on a regular basis, especially if we have to prepare them ourselves. Our kitchen's a kind of a huge ask. I think when we proposed it was over $600,000 to get that project off the ground. But just to prepare for next time. And then another part of that is going to be the meal program itself. So right now we're still preparing meals for 50 to 60 seniors a day at the senior center, and EOC is still providing home delivery meals for 50 to 60 homebound. But I mean, at the cost of about $4 a meal per day, you're looking at about $52,000 to $55,000 that the city's going to spend a year just on providing the food to make the meals for our 50. So if we happen to go back to the 120, 150 we were doing COVID, let's say everyone's homebound again and seniors are, or stay at home, then, you're looking at over $100,000 a year we're spending on just food supplies, and that's not including staff hours, so.
It has my strong, that's at number 2.
Yeah.
If we don't prepare for the people that are the weakest in our communities, we will see them. PD will then see the ramifications of it. It's a trickle-down effect. So it's an Achilles heel of any community.
I would say that remodel and meals would be very high up on mine.
Oh, yeah.
Permitting software.
I think it would actually just to continue using the system that we have, but change
change it over to a web-based system and include Public Works, Fire, and Peters Engineering, we're looking at $100K to do it. We probably spend about $300K and get something better than what we have.
Yeah, I have to figure out the COVID, connection there.
Online
It's
permitting,
there.
they don't have to come in, right?
Yeah, I guess we moved it entirely online.
The ICC webinar listed it as valid, so.
Oh.
Online building permits and business licenses?
Yeah, updating your software and all of that stuff, absolutely.
Even recreation, after-school rec, for reservations, park reservations, special events, all that could be done online.
Move those applications online.
Mhm.
Oh, that would be awesome.
It also moves into the sector for public safety, and aligns with our strategic goals for the city. Improving that to the customer experience and to the people that are around. So I think it becomes important when all of the entities within the city can communicate without having to spend probably 4 times the amount of time and staff time to get one thing accomplished.
In that case, maybe 600,000. The only other one I had was solar, which we just kind of threw out there, which is hard to buy off on because it's infrastructure, but doing a solar system at Public Works or something like that, then later on offsets our utility bills. So, but it is infrastructure. So.
Yeah, I don't know if that's an eligible.
One of the, just to kind of throw the solar stuff, when we look into it, because of the way our well sites are situated, not all of them are conducive to having a big enough solar system to offset enough, or to have enough panels there to offset the usage. So if you look at like well 16, it's kind of in a limited location. You have the basin, but they can't be ground mounted, so you gotta put them up, and that raises the cost, which makes the payback period for solar a lot longer than what it normally would be, so.
Solar flowers. Can the ones that look like the big
Using
flowers?
the solar at the well.
Somebody just wanted to come into town, put those.
Getting a big enough solar system to offset what the usage is.
Right, but they'll allow us to use COVID funds for solar at the wells, not necessarily for like shade parking lot out at Public Works. That's not gonna go, so.
I also have, asphalt park upgrades, just we're talking about parks and.
Park upgrades.
Park upgrades and also BMX bike park pathway, part of that too. And another park, and then, kind of piggybacking, again, it's not so much downtown, but just for the town of, support of the agritourism. If we want to put some more money toward agritourism as well.
Yeah, especially with as big as Gus is getting.
So we're dusting off our agritourism. Right, and go getting that back out, getting people to come here.
Yes? Yeah, vote on that agritourism.
Oh, that's right. I know about too.
I was gonna put it there, but sports complex for the park up there.
I have a question.
Sure.
When we're writing parks down, because one that comes to mind is our dog park, is in the way that it relates to COVID, would that be because it's getting people outside? And like, okay, so, you know, we know the dog park is like a hot topic. So could that be put on there? I know I would love to move the location, that's just my personal opinion. But just so that we can actually have people utilize the dog park, because people do not like to go there right now, in my conversations with residents and neighbors.
We could maybe put money toward that and then look at the other spot.
Another
Talk about
location.
money towards the old location.
And that was actually on my list, the dog park, just to have it, irrigation, grass and trees.
Yes.
And then I think it would be inviting. Exactly.
If they're gonna take, one resident I was talking with said that she, it was Officer Villanueva. She said she takes her dog to Visalia because she doesn't want to use that dog park. And that's the same conversation we've had with a lot of, Keensburg residents.
We're gonna talk about early again.
Yeah. Well, okay, so, and I'd mentioned that to you, but I think we could probably just take some sections of current larger parks and fence them off for dog parks. You know, they'll park within a park.
Kind of like Hanford did.
Yeah,
I love that.
I've seen that in other communities, and, I mean, it wouldn't cost us anything but fencing, so.
Sterling Park's already set up like that, as 3 separate sections.
Yeah.
And I would suggest Apple, but I know we want a lot of that green space to still be utilized for sports.
Oh, yes, some other
But
parks.
there are some, like Heritage has a huge grass area, huge. I was thinking about that.
Bicentennial is not used
At all.
anything right now.
I'm thinking bicentennial.
Just on the parks, I think they have to be part of certain census tracts to be eligible for participating in that.
For eligible for what? For
Yeah, that's what I just have to figure, some of that out.
Well, it says disproportionately impacted communities. So like for Prop 68, when they came up with community fact finder, the different areas that were disadvantaged. So we do have parks that are.
Definitely.
And especially if the park is already existing, then it's just investing in, like you said, the fencing, or dog bags, or whatever it is that helps keep that up, and it's a one-time payment, and then we look to help pay for it later.
Maybe a water spigot for, so you get the dog's water, but that's about it, I mean,
Nothing
pretty
to
minimal.
grass, and just not stickers and dirt.
Probably the ones that are eligible for CDBG.
So.
Probably the ones.
Any others?
Downtown, facade, outdoor space. You know, I noticed a lot of cities I've been to recently, the outdoor space that was temporary is becoming permanent. And we didn't really do much of that. Maybe some analysis, you know, some of these planters, not eliminate the landscape, but, you know, if there's a way to put some hardscape so that people can sit and it could accommodate business, outdoor serving, you know, just like we're seeing, here we go, we're back into, could be at 50% occupancy or less for restaurants. What are they gonna do, deal with it, so,
Like something more permanent?
yeah, something more
Right,
permanent,
not
and maybe that's even with some type of plan for, you know, modifying the parking on Draper, I don't know, you know. Just kind of something that's long-term, and the facade is actually called out.
It is, yeah.
You know, so that's a great deal right there. Yeah.
Well, that's a good one for us too, because we already have a program, so it's established, it's easy.
Yeah. Well, and it's been, I mean, one of the biggest impacts for our downtown is obviously a lot of the improvements that happen because of that program. And,
Sherman, I have outdoor dining right here too, just make it permanent.
yeah,
Support it.
something bigger plan. I mean, I think it would have been a wish before all this happened to do something like that anyways, and now this is kind of an opportunity, so.
And when you think of our businesses that were, highly impacted, or the most impacted, I think it would be restaurants and salons mostly, and just to have something at least for the restaurants that's permanent, if we ever have to head that way again.
I think residents have really enjoyed sitting outside and enjoy that, it's another dynamic of being enjoying, you know, another part of the restaurant. That's nice. It's pretty much all it is.
Good checking on Brandon.
I think that Elizabeth, I don't want to speak for her, but I think what she wants to say is that, you know, the softball one, specifically to put a number to youth sports registration, you know, you're looking at $25,000 for softball, and that's just one sport, obviously. That would be 100% subsidy. I think, you know, even half the subsidy would improve getting people back out, and especially with budgets tight. And it just seems like with this variant, maybe I don't hear a lot of talk about preventing outdoors activity, which was kind of what happened before and eliminated the softball season and a lot of the youth sports season. So it'd be nice to see especially if we have, potentially schools remote and there's not a lot of opportunities for kids to interact.
Yeah, there might be a way to partner too with, like the healthcare district, because I know the Lions, the healthcare district gave us the Lions Club a subsidy for the football program, and there's 170 kids signed up, and a lot of years it's 100 to 120 maybe, so I know there's been an increase in numbers, I think, because of that subsidy.
Well, I can tell you, we've heard from a couple other, people that have moved from other communities where the city contributes to the youth sports and reduces registration. They're like, I gotta pay $100 to play, it's $25 over here, $45 over here. So, all of the youth leagues here operate on just the generosity of sponsors locally, which are businesses. Makes it even that much more difficult to go out and ask right now for sponsorships when they've had a rough year, so.
Sure.
So, I mean, that's baseball, softball,
Soccer,
basketball, cheer, oh my goodness,
cheer.
swimming. So that's when it kind of gets like, I mean, is there
I mean, I think for a lot of these,
each get so much, I mean, that's.
yeah, I think for a lot of these, we have to probably put together some sort of, application or some sort of program where you create a fund, that's sort of the.
We had a grant in
Yeah.
Queenie that applied for the people that meet qualifications, and we can waive the fees back when I was the treasurer in Queenie. So the board decided on helping them, so we can do something like that. Have an application and
You would need a
require.
individual.
Yes,
lead.
so the one that seek help, the city can provide.
I don't know, maybe you do it by like how many board members showed up to. I'm just gonna throw that out there. That's one way to decide.
That's a great idea.
Quite honest, I would put my vote in for that, just because of the positive impact that it has in so many other areas, from health, wellness, the mental, behavioral issues that it would cause. It impacts public safety in the long run. This is an opportunity for us to turn a negative thing into a positive thing, where we can really have a good impact in so many different ways.
And looking at overall the ideas, and the impact of the community, a lot of them really impact adults. And this is one of the few ideas. Education obviously is a huge one that would impact the kids in the community, but youth sports is another one, a great way to be able to reach a whole other generation of the community, like the kids that haven't been able to do sports and haven't been able to get out and socialize with each other, so.
Yeah, because if it's cost prohibitive, it makes it difficult, and there's been a lot of financial impact to people that were already on the fringe prior to COVID. COVID hit, they've been sustained by the COVID money that comes from the federal government, and now we're coming out of it, and now that's gone away. So September 1st, you'll see a lot of people that become homeless, because now the landlords are able to evict, they're able to do things. So there'll be a lot of instantaneous impacts that will have a lot of negative impacts on the community.
Well, it's certainly kids, but, those kids have parents that bring them out there, and it's social time for the parents, and, nothing easier to forget your troubles than watching your kid play a sport. So.
It's a good incentive.
Yep. A lot of positives.
Okay.
Can I add to that? Sure. So we have an existing youth council commission, that Councilmember Roman started years ago. And since COVID has impacted our lives so negatively, to the point of getting kids, wanting to get them out there and do sports again, bringing the focus back to the young people again with revamping that youth council. And it wouldn't take that much money, and the way that it ties to COVID is this revamp would be to get them involved in their community. We can spearhead projects that could be myself, Councilmember Roman, or any other council members who want to help, or city employees who want to help. We could do mock council meetings, we could do community service, we could partner with CAP, and investing, you know, a small amount of money to this council could help, you know, revamp that and keep it going for years to come, but giving it an initial investment can maybe kickstart.
Do a purple workshop with them.
Exactly.
And then, we're just like.
Having just more,
Just was adult focused.
right, and I loved that point that, Elizabeth? Right. Elizabeth brought up is remembering them throughout this, and yeah, hosting things like this, but when you have money, you can do more fun things too, right? It doesn't always have to be work-based, so we could host a resource fair, or we could host an additional movie night other than the summer ones that we have, like a teen one. We can look at different projects, and that's things that were already happening before, but we didn't have the investment. But now we want to get kids out of the house.
Well, and previously it was out of council member Roman's pocket. She was providing all of those, like the
Pizza?
food and saving them, so actually making it
Legit.
official with some funding.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Not so key with you. You feed them, they will come.
And that's spaghetti.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, any other last comments? Councilmember Purcell, any other comments? We're gonna wrap up here maybe, and then we'll maybe open it, see if there's anyone on the line besides.
No, I don't have anything else. Just save as much as we can for right now is my only input.
Okay. Anyone else that's on the line right now? Have any comments? Okay. So I think, next steps are, you know, I'll take these back. I appreciate it all. I'd like all the forms too, if possible, and, you know, try and categorize them and, you know, and then do some research to make sure, you know, talk about the eligibility of them, and then we'll schedule some future meetings, and, you know, we can start talking about maybe pricing and costs for some of those things. We'll do like for the debt forgiveness, I'll get a number, you know, things like that, and then we can schedule a future workshop, and,
How many of these do we have to have?
we don't have to have any.
Oh, I thought you had to.
No, so I just think this is probably the most appropriate way to try and
Absolutely.
just unpack this thing directly, but if we do a few more, and then, or, you know, at least one more, and then, you know, if we can, depending upon what the council thinks, I mean, even if it's just, you know, we're doing a project or a few projects this year, sort of say, okay, this is what we're gonna talk about for this year, and then, you know, this probably becomes, at least for the next, you know, several years or few years, part of the budget discussion and just going forward, because, you know, give updates as we go and things like that. And obviously we'll learn more about what's happening with the pandemic, you know, as the pandemic progresses or doesn't progress, and what that looks like for our budget. Any other questions or comments before we, close up?
Thank you, this is great.
Will we have a next workshop with updates or?
Yeah, I think that's, you know, I think, we do some work, and then, you know, council can set another date, and, that's probably the most appropriate way, is at least have one more of these, at least for some updates, and maybe we'll have some more information from the federal government then too, and, we'll work on getting hopefully some answers and some cost estimates, and then we can come back together. Sound good?
Okay. With that said, then we will adjourn this workshop. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm not going to see you.
Good night, all.